Confederate veterans meeting in 1949 at Little Rock, Arkansas, saluted, as did the nation, their commander, General James W. Moore. General Moore, at 99, follows the heroic dead of the South to a soldier's grave in Selma, Alabama, as the last tiny handful of the boys in gray prepares for the final Confederate reunion in Norfolk, Virginia. Color guards from Virginia Military Institute, of which the general was the oldest graduate, together with relatives, friends, and neighbors, pay final tribute to the gallant soldier who ran away from school at the age of 13 to join the Confederate cavalry. The banner for which General Moore fought is presented to his daughter as an old soldier is laid to rest.
The long-anticipated Freedom March from Selma to Alabama's capital of Montgomery finally gets underway as Dr. Martin Luther King addresses the crowd at the starting point. Twice before, the marchers had been turned back by state troopers. Now they march under a federal court order and with the protection of federalized National Guard units and regular troops, a total of nearly 3,000 men. For the first day, there are 3,200 marchers in line. Half of the four-lane Highway 80 is closed to traffic. Later, where it becomes two lanes, the marchers had been ordered by the court to reduce their number to 300, a measure designed for their safety. A few isolated flare-ups between whites and Negroes, but otherwise the demonstration is peaceful. The first day, the marchers tramp a little over 7 miles. Those who have been assigned to complete the 54-mile walk hope to present a petition to Governor George Wallace. The first night is spent in a field near New Sister Springs Baptist Church, their host a Negro farmer. While 2,900 of the marchers return to Selma, the rest resume their long trek. Organizers hope their ranks will be swelled once again when the nucleus arrives in Montgomery. The Freedom March has been an historical venture in nonviolent protest.
members of the Newz media. State troopers have been assigned to your protection. You are to move off of the street immediately and assemble in front of Lehman's Pontiac dealer. Otherwise, you will not be protected.
The safety of you nor the public. It'll be using this highway. It'll be detrimental to your safety to continue this march, and I'm saying that this is an unlawful assembly. You are to disperse. You are ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church. This march will not continue. Troopers here advance toward the group. See that they disperse.
Can we have somebody take somebody to a doctor?
Here we go. Here we go. Everybody want to let you go. Sit down, right? Sit down, right? Regroup those men. Regroup that man. Regroup the troopers. Regroup the troopers.
The main body of the demonstrators
World War I will not be seen tonight in order to bring you the following CBS News special report.
I wanna help
This is a CBS News special report. Selma, the city and the symbol. Here is CBS News correspondent Alexander
4,000 men and women, white and black, northern and southern, have crossed the arched bridge out of Selma, Alabama, and are marching the 50 miles that will take them to the state capitol in Montgomery. A few minutes before 1 this afternoon, Selma time, the vanguard moved over the bridge and past the point where state police stopped them 2 weeks ago. Behind them, a solid mass of demonstrators streamed out of Selma and across the Alabama River. Most will drop out of the line of march after today's first leg of 7 miles to rejoin it again Thursday when it enters Montgomery. Federal troops and a federalized National Guard stood by as the march began and now line the road. They were ordered here yesterday by President Johnson to protect the marchers against those Alabamans hostile toward the demonstrators and their leader, Martin Luther King, who was first to cross the bridge and continues to lead the procession. In announcing the mobilization of federal power, the president made it clear that in his view, the significance of the march extended far beyond Selma itself.
Over the next several days, the eyes of the nation will be upon Alabama, and the eyes of the world will be upon America. It is my prayer, a prayer in which I hope all Americans will join me earnestly today, that the march in Alabama may proceed in a manner honoring our heritage and honoring all for which America stands. May this, the conduct of all Americans, demonstrate beyond dispute that the true strength of America lies not in arms and not in force, and not in the might of the military or in the police, nor in the multitudes of marshals and state troopers, but in respect and obedience to law itself.
Behind them, the marchers leave a city that has seen almost 3 months of uninterrupted turmoil and confrontation. Most of them, those who came to Selma primarily to join this march, may never see the city again. It now lies behind them in more ways than one. Back in Selma remain 2 shock communities, for Selma is not likely to be one community soon. Neither white Selma nor black Selma has quite come to terms with what has happened, but both do know that it is bigger than Selma itself. Selma, Alabama. Population 28,775, slightly more than half of them Negroes. Altitude 147 feet. Seat of Dallas County, occupying a high bluff on the north bank of the Alabama River. The first permanent settler was Thomas Moore, who in 1815 came floating down the river on a flatboat out of nowhere. The town that Moore founded grew quickly into a city surrounded by cotton plantations. The city had a slave economy like all Alabama, no better and no worse than other southern cities, although perhaps more handsome than most. There was excitement in 1825. The Marquis de Lafayette, hero of the Revolutionary War, stopped here on the way to the capital, and for the first time, the city's name appeared in the news. Lafayette put Selma on the map. 40 years later, Union General James Ace Wilson almost took it off the map. The last battle of the Civil War was fought in Selma and left the city in ruins. The plantations never recovered, but in time the city flourished again. In 1940, a chronicler wrote, "Modest as are some of its aspects, an antebellum atmosphere that the march of progress has not destroyed is still evident. Selma is like an old-fashioned gentlewoman, proud and patrician, but never unfriendly. Antebellum houses and dim old buildings that were erected not long after Lafayette visited." Since Reconstruction days, he continued, Selma's Negro and white citizens have lived in an atmosphere of sympathetic understanding, tinged by friendly paternalism on the part of the whites. As in all southern cities and some northern ones, there are really 2 Selmas, one white and one colored. Everybody can come down to Broad Street to shop or to admire the ornate Venetian facade of the hotel. But the white residents go home to one section of town, the Negroes to another. Here, the houses are different, the schools are different, even the sidewalks are different. There is some integration in Selma that wasn't there 25 years ago. A Negro can go into a white hotel, movie house, or restaurant. Some have done so. A white man can also go into a Negro hotel or restaurant, a restaurant like Walker's Cafe on Washington Street, for example. No Selma white man would have dreamed of doing so. Perhaps no white man had ever entered Walker's Cafe for a meal until 2 weeks ago, when 3 clergymen from the North did so. Registration for voting takes place in Dallas County here at the county courthouse. At the last election, there were about 10,000 registered to vote. Only 350 of them were Negroes. Negro protests about this disparity had been heard for some time in Selma, but they had made little headway. On January 2nd, 1965, Martin Luther King came to Selma. He left no doubt that the Black Belt City would be the new focal point for drastic action to get Negro voters registered.
Then if they don't listen once more, we will dramatize this whole situation and seek to arouse the conscience of the federal government by marching by the thousands on places of registration all over this state. And when we talk about marching by the thousands, we always prepare ourselves for the follow-up. If it is necessary, we are willing and must be willing to go to jail by the thousands in Alabama to get the right to vote. If you will march on with your brothers in Alabama, you will look around and see that glad day when all of God's children will be able to cry out, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
On February 1st, demonstrators led by Dr. King proceeded to the courthouse as part of a long series of marches. The result was to be a mass arrest, the charge parading without a license. But before being led away, these demonstrators, like many arrested before them, knelt in prayer. The prayer was led by the Reverend Ralph Abernathy.
This prayer we ask in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Amen.
All right, now will you follow me, please?
Now the march was to jail. Somewhere inside was Dr. King, who stayed behind bars to dramatize his aims. Pickets marched outside the courthouse to plead for King's release. Then the pickets themselves were arrested. Dr. King was freed several days later after posting bail. On March 3rd, in Selma's Brown Chapel Nerve Center for the voter registration drive, funeral services were held for the first casualty, 26-year-old Jimmy Lee Jackson. Jackson had been shot by a state trooper in nearby Marion, Alabama, several days before. The mourners in Selma heard a eulogy by Reverend Mr. Abernathy, who spoke prophetically of the possibility that Jimmy Lee Jackson would not be the last man to die before the vote campaign ended.
We are celebrating today not a defeat but a victory. We gather around the bier of our first casualty in the Black Belt demonstrations. And who knows that you and I, before it's over, may take our rightful places along beside Jackson, Medgar Evers, and all the rest. He died with the staff in his hand. And this is the beauty of his death. He did not die running. He did not die dodging. He did not die as a coward. But he was shot down on the streets of Marion, Alabama, standing up for his rights.
Troopers here advance toward the group. See that they turn around and disperse.
On Sunday, March 7th, state troopers and sheriff's deputies advanced on a column of demonstrators who had planned a 50-mile march to Montgomery, the capital. The marchers fell under clubs and whips. With the cloud of tear gas, Selma ceased to be an obscure southern city and became a symbol. From every corner of the United States, civil rights workers and their supporters began to pour into town. This was the line of confrontation, not with tanks like Checkpoint Charlie, not with barbed wire like the Brandenburg Gate, not even principally a confrontation with state troopers, weapons, and massive authority on one side, and on the other, clerics, students, civil rights demonstrators. It was a confrontation of conscience. For more than a week, that line was held. The protests grew slowly at first. Then, on Tuesday, March 9th, the three clergymen entered Walker's Cafe for dinner, and as they left, were set upon by several white men. One of the ministers, the Reverend James Reeb of Boston, died. For thousands of sympathizers, the trip to Selma became a pilgrimage.
Well, a group of us from San Francisco State College, SNCC, decided that it was time for us to come. As simple as that.
I'm not in on the policy making, but I hope that perhaps I can help everybody to communicate with each other better. I think this is a very important part of the clergy's role here. We want the people on the other side of the line to know that it isn't just a handful of radicals. Well, maybe they are radical, but if they are, they have good reason for it, because these people here know what it means to have been treated brutally, and we are here because of the brutal treatment they received last Sunday.
We've just simply been here. We've been wet, we've been muddy, we've been messy like everybody else, but we hope that we have witnessed to something that's extremely important to us and to our nation.
Selma was no longer a quiet city on the Alabama River. It was the center of the attention of the whole world. The white community was dismayed, shocked, and in search of explanations. Downtown in the business district and out at the country club, white citizens asked themselves what had happened to the Selma they knew and why. Their answers were not all the same. Seymour Palmer, born and brought up in the North, but for more than 20 years a Selma businessman.
Selma is a small town, basically a religious town, a town that is steeped in the tradition of the Old South. And despite what may be believed by most people, Selma is a town of people who believe in law and order and not violators of the law. I don't believe it. It's a paradox that the condition exists as it is today. I think that basically Selma citizens want law and order, even at the cost of refuting some of the ideas that they had as children. But unfortunately, they are not allowed to live that type of life today because of external circumstances and because of the imposition upon Selma of a certain picture that is geared to the national level and for national consumption, and not just to alleviate conditions in Selma, Alabama.
Dean Wilcox, teacher in the junior high school in Selma.
Oh, it just hurts me deeply. It hurt me and my wife and my family. They were from here and lived here all their lives and have many colored friends, and it has hurt us very deeply because of the false impression that it has been given. Because all the news and television that has come out has painted us so blackly. And it's really not that way.
Charles Lyde, electronics technician.
Well, if there's trouble in the South, I'm unaware of it. There was no trouble here until the present troublemakers came along.
R.W. Yeager, high school teacher.
If they were let alone, they would listen to us here in the South because they know we are their friends. Now, over generations, they have had that proven to them.
Roswell Falconberry, editor of Selma's newspaper.
We've come to realize in the last few months, and that too is my personal opinion, that there are a number of things that probably should have been done years ago that we failed to do. We accept that responsibility, and if we could work these things out between our own people, that is our colored community and our white community, I feel positive that we could resolve any differences that now are outstanding. Now that is to say, that it can be done with local people without outside coercion and propaganda.
I believe that 2 years ago, Birmingham, with its police commissioner, known as, quote, bull, unquote, Connor, was a symbol at that time. I believe Birmingham was chosen as a target with Bull Connor as the symbol of resistance, and I firmly believe that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was written based upon the Birmingham story. I also believe that not being satisfied with the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the slow legal technique to be used in furthering their cause and to take the demonstrations off the street, I believe that it was desired to have a new Civil Rights Act written, and I believe with some sound thinking perhaps, they had to choose another symbol.
Meanwhile, in the Negro community of Selma, outside Brown Chapel, which had been the focal point of the demonstrations, Negro residents of the city were being asked the same kind of question, and they produced a quite different kind of answer. Joseph Mitchell, who works in the brick factory, was asked if he was satisfied with the way things had been around Selma.
No, definitely no one have ever been satisfied. They just didn't have any nothing to go on. But definitely you're going to go up and tell a bunch of men you're not satisfied about something. And then probably next week you go home, you see they start marching up down the street, blowing their horn, Ku Klux Klan, sign in front of your house, moving all that kind of jive, you lose your job. So just take it as it comes. Suffer the good with the bad. That's it.
We are part of humanity, and whatever humanity's problems are, they are ours too. It would be unthinkable for us to be disassociated from what is going on. It matters not how our little particular niche appears, we are still an integral part of the community, of the life of the people and our people, and we feel it just that way.
Mrs. Vashti LaShore.
A number of whites here in Selma have told us that the Negroes here are satisfied. It's just the outside people who agitate.
No, they're wrong. They're wrong. We just had no other choice. We just don't have no say-sos over nothing. If they pick you up, say you was guilty or something, you had to be guilty, you had to pay, whether you was guilty or not. They didn't give you a chance. They never have. And I've been living here all my life.
Warrenella Hiller, teenager.
What's it like living in Selma?
I mean, to me, it's okay. Sure, we can't go to places like the other kids go. We just have 2 or 3 little places we go to hang out. But, I mean, it's okay. Sure, I'd like to go to some other places like they go to, and that's what we're trying to do now.
There are places that you simply can't go into, or you're afraid to go into?
I mean, I'm not afraid to go into some of them. Sure, I admit I am afraid to go into. And some places we can go into, but like we went downtown to the Thirsty Boy, and they have a rock coal in there, and they put a sign on it saying out of order. And as soon as we stopped going in the place, the sign came off the rock cola.
Roosevelt Moore, day laborer.
Well, if you yield to them or whatever they want you to do, they treat you nice. But if you don't agree with whatever they approve of, they just beat you to death or kill you, anything.
Calvin Peter Mace.
Well, we've been under pressure all our days. We just took it and went along with it. And we didn't have no way to do any better, and so we just went on.
Were you satisfied with the way things were?
I never have been satisfied. Wasn't no satisfaction to come because you didn't get justice.
Do you think this is a way, what's going on here now this week?
Seems to be the best way ever hit Selma. I've never seen anything like it before. And I'm around 71 years old. The best thing I ever seen in Selma.
To keep white and black Selma apart during this period of protest and disorder, there were more than enough police. Almost every department of the state had helmeted and armed officers on the scene. The Game Warden's Department, the Liquor Control Board, the Water Department. Even over the city line and inside the city, the state troopers were on patrol. But the two principal forces in Selma were a volunteer posse of the Sheriff's Office and the city police under the Department of Public Safety. Their leaders do not always see eye to eye. We spoke to them both.
You're talking like a mild-mannered, reasonable man. How did you get this reputation for being such a tough character?
Well, I don't know. It's just the fact that when the Negroes broke the law, the local laws, that is the state laws, which we in the Sheriff's Office are sworn to uphold, we upheld the laws, enforced them to the best of our ability, and in doing that, we got the name of being a villain merely by enforcing the law.
What would happen to you if you didn't enforce the law?
Well, I think the good people of Dallas County would see that I'm impeached.
Do you have any feeling about the law one way or the other yourself, personally? I mean, about this situation between white and colored here?
Well, I do have my feelings. I'm a segregationist, and I say this: if my ancestors had not been segregationists, I might be a mulatto, and I'm proud to be a white man.
Well, Selma is very definitely not a mean town. We've had some very unfortunate situations that came up here, and in handling this situation, it made us look probably to the nation as a mean town. But we're not a mean town. We're basically peace-loving people, and the majority of the people in this community are certainly law-abiding people and have a very deep desire to abide by the law here.
Well, how did this trouble come about?
Well, it just happened, I guess, because we've had such a long series of demonstrations here. We've had almost continuous demonstrations now since the 18th of January. We had mass demonstrations 3 or 4 nights a week dating back to the 2nd of January, and after a bit, people's nerves just get a little on edge, I guess, and these things happen.
The leader of the Selma protest from the time it took on momentum weeks ago, and both in person and in spirit, the leader of today's march, has at every moment been Dr. Martin Luther King. In some degree, the troops are here today to protect Dr. King. He was asked earlier today to express the significance of this event as he feels it on this day when the country's eyes are fastened again, or still fastened, on Selma.
I think this is a demonstration of progress that is definitely being made. The fact that once our people were totally and terribly brutalized here, and today we can march by this very same spot without being stopped and without being harassed up to this point, represents a level of progress that's very significant.
Have all the activities of the past weeks in Selma come to fruition now? Is this the grand climax?
I would say this and its culmination in the march on the Capitol on Thursday. This is certainly the high moment and the high point in the struggle in Alabama. Now, this does not mean that we will hold up our work in the Black Belt. We will continue. But I would think that this whole experience, this march, which will culminate in Montgomery on Thursday, represents the real high point in our movement.
The march itself was nearly 5 hours late getting underway. Part of the delay was due to the sheer size of the crowd, swelled by hundreds of reporters and cameramen. There were also difficulties with arrangements for the first night's bivouac, the original plans having fallen through. In the end, the delay made it necessary to curtail today's leg to 7 miles instead of 11, as originally planned. In mid-morning, news swept through the crowd of the discovery of attempts to bomb a Catholic church, a funeral home, and a residence in the Negro district of Birmingham. The dynamite was found and the fuses cut. Later in the day, a fourth time bomb, like the others homemade, was found and defused near a Negro school. But despite the grimness of a military escort, placards and songs gave the early stages of the march almost a festive air. It is being conducted with a sense of triumph. Those who are marching from Selma today appear to believe they are marching into America's history. Since they first attempted it and were beaten back, only 2 calendar weeks have passed, but it has been a political and a social eon. Some may feel that today's march has become outdated, for the voting rights which it sought are now on their way through Congress. But though with swelled ranks it is now a procession of vindication instead of supplication, it is not to be measured alone by the widespread events it has brought about, but by its purpose. The confrontation at Selma has ended in a breakthrough for civil rights. Those who march from Selma may regard it as a victory. Many of those who remain behind may look upon it as a defeat. But its true significance is that this is a battlefield on which no one can lose. Like previous confrontations in American history, and like future ones, Selma must result in the emancipation of both sides. The march has just stopped for the night, but it goes on, always on. This is Alexander Kendrick.
This has been a CBS News special report. Selma, the city, and the symbol.
World War I will be broadcast at its regular time next week. A foreign